Welcome to Modern Aikidoist Podcast. Before we start, I want to thank everyone who has supported the show, and in particular those of you who have contributed to the PayPal tip jar. Of course, the likes, subscribes, and shares help a great deal as well. I enjoy bringing you this content, and the contributions help cover the expenses for doing so. I've had a wonderful time chatting with the people on these shows, so much so that I would like to have them back for further conversations. As you listen, if there are any questions or topics you would like to hear us discuss, please post up a note in the comments or send me them directly. I'll pick the best ones and we'll cover them in future episodes. Another way you can get more content is to join the Spirit Aikido online program. There are currently more than 130 videos in the program, with new ones being added every few days. Subscribers get access to video training and mentoring to techniques and training methods that I've adopted from other martial arts to make my Aikido more practical. In the most recent series of videos, I cover weaponizing a couple of standard Aikido techniques, as well as provide some alternate finishes for Tenshi Nage. There's a link to the program in the description. I invite you to check it out. Now, on with the discussion. One last thing I want to say before we get started. At the beginning, I mispronounced Ryon's name as Ryon, so I apologize for that. So with no further ado, let's get on with the interview. I'm very excited to welcome Rionne Fujiwara. Is that your wrestling name?
Yeah.
To Modern Aikidoist Podcast. I know you joined our forum a while back, a year or two ago, a year and a half or so ago, and had some great stuff to say. So I'm really excited to have you on today.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. I really enjoyed, I haven't listened to a whole lot of them, but I have listened to the Ellis one with Bruce Bookman and
yeah.
Bush Gold one as well. And I enjoyed both. They were really good.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I
really
they were great discussions, and I'm loving these. Some people call them interviews, but to me they just seem like we're sitting around having a conversation. So
yeah.
I really dig that part. Well, cool. And we're going to get to some listener questions too. We had a number of them come in once I announced that you were going to be coming on, and
awesome.
People I want to hear this, or I want to hear that. So we're definitely going to get to some interesting questions. But I wanted to start out because, as I understand it, you trained primarily at Hombu Dojo, the Aikikai Hombu Dojo. Is that right?
When I was a university student here in Japan, my university was right next to Tada Sensei's dojo, Hiroshi Tada. It was 9th Dan.
Okay.
And I was training with him for about 4 years, and he's an amazing master. Just like he's took ukemi directly for O Sensei, and he's very out there because he talks a lot about the universe and all these concepts that even his high-ranking Japanese students don't understand, and they freely will tell you that we have no idea what he's actually talking about. He's very eccentric, but he's like the definition of a real shihan. But as I was getting into my 3rd or 4th years with him, I realized that as good as this guy is, it's not really what I'm looking for. And I kind of almost decided really to jack in, give it up, because I had done karate for so long when I was a kid, taekwondo before that. I missed the kicks, but I missed like this, that your techniques mean something when you do them. Like when you kick for a reason, when you punch for a reason, kind of thing. I really miss that. And there was I think it was the 8th or 12th. I'm not sure. 8th International Aikikai Congress. And it was held in Tanabe, down south of Japan, in 2008. And my friend from Australia, my Aikido friend, came out, and I told him, look, man, I'm going to jack it in, but I'm going to go down to this Congress because you're here. We'll get on the beers at nighttime. We'll run amok, and we'll get on the mats half hungover, and we'll just go and have some fun. And 3 days into it, I was kind of like, yeah, this sucks. This is how I thought it was going to be. And with these kind of, I don't know if you're familiar with these congresses, it's probably at 2,000 people from all over the world.
Okay. I've heard of them, but I've never attended one.
Right. And it's kind of like, it's so funny to see, like, the the French ones walking around like strutting their stuff, and then the Brazilians with all their badges down here like they're doing BJJ. It's so funny from a cultural aspect to see different. You meet a lot of really cool people at these events, but I was kind of like done with Aikido until I saw Yoshiaki Yokota Shihan. Now he's a Hombu Dojo Shihan. And when I saw this guy throw a sidekick and later on in Jiu-Jitsu armbar, I was like, whoa, holy, this is the guy I'm looking for. And I quit Tada Sensei's dojo the minute I got back to Tokyo. And I joined Yokota Sensei's training in Hombu. And for the last 12 years, I may have done about 10 classes with other teachers maybe not even one per year with the other Hombu teachers, just Yokota Sensei. And I just dedicated my training to just, being like this guy because he gets it. He really gets it because he come from a background of judo and karate, right? So he really gets it that, Aikido can be a martial art.
Yeah, and that's something that you gave me a very strong impression of when you started posting up in the forum, and I really like that. Because I view my own impression of Aikido that way. To me, it's got to be practical, well-rounded. It's got to be useful. It's not just a choreography or just a small subset of techniques. Right. And that's what I was curious about. Do you find that your views are kind of welcomed over there? But you kind of answered that in the fact that there's a Shihan that has that attitude within Hombu Dojo that you were drawn to. So it clearly can't be that there's like a rift between the people that want to have a practical martial art approach to Aikido versus a spiritual or a, in it for something else, some other aspect.
Well, Yokota Sensei can do both. He was known in his younger days for I wouldn't say being rough, but being like a legit ass kicker. There are stories like he had to go to Russia in the early 90s to spread Aikido to a place that had no Aikido. And he was getting these big judo guys coming along. And he told me like the minute one of them tried to stop him or to try to be, a bit funny, it was like, let's get to the eyes. Or there's stories of him, he's broken a couple of collarbones from people who have tried to stop him. He's not rough in that, but I guess in his younger days, he was kind of a little bit of a legit ass kicker.
Sure.
There are stories of him going around fighting the lower ranking Yakuza in Shinjuku, in Tokyo here, and when he was younger, and some of them having to come to Hombu and say, look, your guy's out of control, stop him. I think, but there was in his younger days, he's in every definition, the definition of a true Shihan, but he's also not so popular with the general Hombu Dojo public. I remember when I first started going, he was like having like 6 or 7 people in his class compared to 40 or 50 on the mats for the other ones. Like someone like a Miyamoto Sensei, who is like the polar opposite. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him, but he's very much like, you grab here, you hold on hard, you try to move their center, and it's very slow. And then at the very end, it's powerful. Yokota Sensei is like, just grab me, attack me, and I'm moving. And he's like a ghost. And that's what really drew me, because when I take ukemi for him, all I do is attack him 100% purely. And I just let him do the rest. Whereas some of the other Shihan, and I'm not trying to speak ill of them, but I grab them or I attack them and I'm like, oh, okay, what do I do now? Oh, he wants me to move this way. Okay. And I've been in situations, I will drop one name, Yasuno Shihan, who's since left Hombu because of his age time is up. I'll never forget once I took ukemi for him in the middle of the class and I didn't react the way he wanted me to. If you have a look at some of his YouTube videos, you'll see that he's got this very unique style, I'll say, where he likes to like push theatrically, I'll say.
Okay.
And I didn't get it. I was only a needle or something at the time, and I didn't fall the way that he fell, and he ridiculed me in front of the entire Hombu Dojo class. Who is this guy? Why can't you take ukemi? And I wanted to say to him, like, what he was like, I don't know your style. You should be able to. You're a shihan. I think he was eighth dan. You're an eighth dan shihan. You should be able to throw anybody. And I mean, I'm taking ukemi regularly for Yokota sensei, so I'm no slouch when it comes to ukemi. So that's a couple of experiences that I've had where I'm just gonna stick with my guy, and if no one comes, no one comes. But I would say go on.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
These classes are 50% of the rest of the regular Hombu. Like Doshu's classes are, you can't move. Like there's literally centimeters between you and the next people.
Right.
The Kodo Sensei, we have a lot of room. We maybe get on a Monday night, maybe 30 people. Whereas Doshu will get 60 to 70.
Yeah, I think anybody that's been in Aikido long enough, and you get it up to Shodan or into the Udansha ranks, and you wind up being uke for a senior instructor or something, you run into that experience. I know I have. And initially you feel like, well, boy, I didn't read the instructor's mind well enough to know what, but as I thought about it more, I thought really what that is I don't know their choreography.
Yeah, that's exactly
it. And that's, initially you kind of beat yourself up a little bit, like I need to be more educated. I need to be, and then you think, well, again, just like you, like this is a senior instructor. This is 6th, 7th, 8th dan, and they can't operate outside their choreography or the expected dance that they're supposed to do. And I kind of, that's the conclusion I came to after having had done a number of times. Cause I mean, I wanted to be the right uke for the instructor to show the technique they wanted to show, but they didn't give instruction exactly on what to do. A lot of times I got it, but those times that you don't, you feel like, well, this is something weird going on here.
Right.
But yeah, I agree with you. It does seem that same way. Did you, so I guess that answers another question that I wanted to have is, do you find other like minds that are encouraged by your approach that want to train with you and want to train with that instructor? But you said those classes are pretty small.
I would say in my time in Hombu, I was very fortunate that the very first class at Hombu, I'm sitting down the back because your first time in this class, you don't want to just jump to the front. You kind of hide in the back a little bit and just kind of you want to feel out. And I saw this wiry guy, bald, that kind of Jason Statham look. I saw him just dart to the front, and his stretches in my very first class were like this guy. You could tell that he'd been there a long time. 2, he was like Yokota Sensei's top guy. He was a white guy. He was an American. And I kind of just, I started looking at him. And I could see straight away the difference between this guy, DJ his name is, and he's from Chicago, and the rest of the group. So I kind of had a look, and cut a long story short, he became one of my best friends and my senpai. And this is a guy with like 5 black belts who kind of basically taught me how to be a martial artist. And I think this whole idea of like this senpai kohai, like senior junior relationship in Japan, it's so big in every aspect of society, but it seems to be lost in Aikido. There are not many legitimate senpai kohai. I was so lucky because senpai kohai it also goes off the mats. Like, how you doing, kid? Come over for dinner, and genuinely trying to build a relationship where, you're so close to each other that when it's time to train, like he picked me apart. And no matter how much I know right now, I know that he since has gone back to America, but I know that the minute I train with him, no matter how much I know now, he will still pick me apart because he's got that much level of experience, and everything I know, he taught me. And he was kind of like the translator for Yokota Sensei, right? Whereas like when Sensei was saying something, DJ would say like, oh, well, he really means this. This is what he means. And this is how you do the applied thing. This is how you do, this is the nice Aikido. This is the applied thing, the applied technique. And can you see that? And in karate, it's just like this. Like Yokota Sensei does this, karate is this, and And he was the one guy, really the only one guy in the entire dojo who got that. There are a couple of other really legitimate, serious like ass kickers as well. But in general, I found someone like me who has done a lot of other martial arts and can see that there's so much more than just the outside that curriculum that they have.
Mm-hmm.
There's DJ, and then there's another guy that came along who became my best friend as well, and he was a former military police officer from Serbia, and he was responsible for finding people who ran away from the military and hauling them back.
Okay.
Murders in Serbia. You can imagine, like, these Serbian guys, they don't want to go back to the military.
Right.
They'll do anything they can.
Mm-hmm.
And he was responsible for it. And he told me, like, he's a Yondan. He got his Yondan a few months just before me. Hussein, his name is. And he told me that Aikido 100% works.
Mm-hmm.
He used it in the field, getting deserters. He's also like and this is the common thing, and I'm sure it might be a good segue into another question, but these two guys and the other few ones that I've come across, they all cross-trained.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They all cross-trained. Hussein is a grappler and he's a kendo guy, and he's also tan kendo, which is like the short kendo stick, right?
Mm-hmm.
And DJ, as I said, has 5 black belts. So we have the three of us, this common idea that you can't just have Aikido by itself. You must, because like Aikido is like a finishing art, I believe, right? And you notice back in the day when old sensei made it open, that people coming from other arts, like kendo guys came in, judo guys came in, and they're like, wow, there's something here that I've been missing in my training,
mm-hmm.
And I'm going to stick around. Like this Shiba guy, he's got something. And Kano Jigoro would send his top guys, right? His top judo guys. And he would say, like, this is the guy that you need to learn from.
Mm.
And I think that if you only do the basic syllabus or syllabi of the Aikikai or whatever Aikido that you're doing, you kind of, what's the word? You're putting yourself into a very small corner, mm-hmm. when really there's so much more out there that you can bring into your Aikido, right?
Mm-hmm. I've wondered about that for a long time about, if you're an instructor and you have basically like finishing school, if a sensei kind of was that, and you had students coming to you that were already high ranked, they already had a lot of experience in other arts that had their own subsets of techniques and whatnot, your curriculum wouldn't reteach them the stuff they already know how to do. You would have a curriculum made up of the rest of the things that are not there. Right. Now, what happens when you bring a brand new person in who's never done any martial art from day one, and now you teach them without that prerequisite understanding of those other things? And I think, I don't know how, even if a sensei even addressed that ever, or any of his students ever addressed it. Maybe it's a topic that never got brought up. Oh, we got all these judo guys that do these great hip throws. We're not teaching any hip throws. And now we get, Joe Beginner, he doesn't know how to do it. Right. And so there's really two ways to solve the problem. One is either you bring that stuff into your curriculum for those people that don't have it, or you send them down the street to go train in judo and then, do the cross train. I think either one is perfectly valid. I don't think, I know a lot of Aikido people resist we don't want to have any influence from that. We don't want to have any influence from that. We don't want to bring any of this stuff in-house, but they also aren't too keen about having people go cross-train somewhere else. But I think we both understand, everybody has at least got a basic comprehension that a complete martial artist needs to know how to do a lot more than just one specialized thing. Mm-hmm. And I know that's what I want for my own art. And I would like it to be under the Aikido umbrella, because I love the strategy. I love the approach. I love the maturity that it breeds. Although the more that I've trained with high level people from other arts, that maturity is not unique to Aikido. Mm-hmm. I've met wrestlers, boxers, all kinds of combatives, people that have the same, I don't want to use any more force than I need to solve a problem. I'd like to do it elegantly. I'd like to do it without harming myself or the other person if I can do that. Like, that's, unless you're a knuckle dragging goon, and there's not a lot of knuckle draggers in the martial arts in general, they tend to share that same benevolent attitude. Like, and none of them want to get into a fight unless they absolutely have to. Right. Like, there's a few
martial arts teaches us to be humble, mm-hmm. to it teaches us hopefully to learn how to fight properly. Oh, and yeah, like you say, like the one thing I will notice, and I don't want to sound too negative, but I find that, you know, like I'm grappling a lot these days, and just yesterday I rolled with a professional MMA fighter, and this kid is 24 years old. He's a pro, and he was so humble. Like, oh, thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for that. And I kind of really wish that we had a little bit more of that in Aikido.
I agree.
find that the ones like ourselves that that have been out and have seen the real world and what other martial artists can do, we tend to be the most humble.
Yeah.
The ones, but there are a lot of I don't know how to. There are a lot of. I'll be honest with you straight up. A lot of ignorant people on the Aikido tatami, who believe in going very slow and at the very end throwing you as hard as they can, which is my philosophy the complete opposite, right?
Exactly.
The Aikido is just a nice little throw at the end. It's what we need to do to get to that position, you know, to wonder, wonder if things work or not. But yeah, sorry, what was your question?
Oh no, actually, you brought up a great point about the humility part, and I wanted to throw in something there, and because I agree, I've seen the same thing. I used to compete in full contact arts, full contact sparring art for like 25 years. So I competed in tournaments and things like that. And what I found is there are a few people that are jerks in the competitive realm, but the vast majority of them are humble.
Yeah.
I did find that competing made you humble. You could not be arrogant. You bring arrogance into competition and you will get smoked. And you will find somebody that is going to straighten your attitude out real quick. And what I found was that the humility was not only self-focused to realize that you don't know as much as you think you do, but it was also in saying, wow, I just saw what you did. That's amazing. I want to learn from you. Like that's where the humility clicks in, where you say, I want you to show me that, or you have the reverse comes. Somebody says, hey, you just did that technique really great. Can you show me? And you say, yeah, I'll take some time with you. I'll try to share what I know with you. Like that is a bond within competitors that I think a lot of Aikido people that warm up a little too much to the don't ever compete, competition's a bad thing. They really throw the baby out with the bathwater, because I found some of the best friendships I had was in competition, even with people that were better than I was. And I would drive across the country to get my ass kicked by these people. But it was I would learn so much. I would enjoy it. And not because I'm some kind of a masochist or something, but because I knew I was going to learn. I was going to walk away with something that I did not have before. And my experience there led me to one other observation about Aikido, and that is it's not about the precision of the technique. And I'm sure you know this as a competitor as well. There's a glue that holds the techniques that you know how to do together when you have to apply those things against somebody who has a will to dominate you, and you have the mindset to outwit them, to execute a better strategy, to adapt when your plan doesn't work. All of that stuff is outside the realm of how precise is my footwork, how good is my range control, how good is my precise is my technique, or powerful is my technique. Even to the point you had, which is perfect, is it's not how hard you have the guy hit the ground, it's how quickly you take control and how you keep it.
Right.
Then once you have it, you can be as benevolent as you want.
But in my experience as well, sorry, on that point, I found that a lot of people that I've trained with, and my experiences I can only tell you from training at Hombu Dojo, but this is with Japanese and non-Japanese, is that the minute that, let's just say you take them very fast and then you throw them very slow, they also take that for weakness. And
really?
To me, to me that's just that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. So I just kind of gave up on being Mr. Nice Guy, and
Sure. It also occurred to me pretty recently that is the reason why Steven Seagal's Aikido is so well suited to the movies, because it is very visually powerful to see somebody going in this huge, powerful throw with a powerful end. And all the martial arts up until that point on the silver screen tended to be super fast. Whether you go back to Bruce Lee, you get Jackie Chan's incredible athletics and his gymnastic flair for the martial arts. And then there was just countless ones. Jeff Speakman, there was, but speed was everything. But there's a limit to how speed attracts the eye when it comes to just the aesthetic of it. Seeing a body go flying through the air, I mean, that is like movie magic all day long. And so, to me, that's where those huge throws, which, in my opinion, from a self-defense standpoint, those huge throws are not terribly practical. But taking control of somebody's balance immediately and basically crushing them to the ground would be. But that wouldn't be as attractive looking in a movie screen.
Like you say, it's all about how it looks. It's right. Style over substance. Mm-hmm. And I'm the complete opposite. 100%.
I'm the same way too. In fact, I had a mentor who was a competitor, and he liked the substance and the style. In fact, intimidation was one of his big things. He wanted to make sure that by the time that tournament rolled around, everybody that was there knew that he was going to win it. And that to me was that intimidation was the style part. And he would express that very strongly. And I liked the opposite. I liked kind of like having the sleeper car that looked like a jalopy, it was rusted out, but it had a nitrous system in it, and it would just blow the doors off everything. So I like the surprise. But this is so much why I like seeing different people's personality come out when they're on the mat or when they're competing, because you see what they're really about. And the people that were posers that could strut around and talk a big game, and then when it came time to deliver, they had nothing. It was all just talk. And to me, that was the beauty part of competing. And the beautiful part about the mat is, on the mat, you cannot hide who you really are. Like, no matter how much you try to fake it, you can't fake it. You see what everybody's about.
One thing that the three of us, me, Hussein, and DJ, always say is that the tatami never lies.
That's a great phrase. I'm stealing that one. The tatami never lies.
And it doesn't. And that's not just with your technique. Mm-hmm. It never lies because it reflects on who you really are. You can't lie to anybody else, and you can't lie to yourself.
Right.
Because no matter how hard you think, like, you're doing the nice soft thing, and then you're being a bit of an asshole at the end and throwing hard, deep down inside, these people know deep down inside that, this is just an art of Aikido. Is that I don't want to say they know that. I don't want to say that they know that the techniques don't work, but I think they realize that there's a whole lot more to executing a technique than just throwing hard. But especially at Hombu Dojo, where you start the practice, there's zero talking, and you finish. It's 100 miles an hour. There's not much learning going on. All you want to do is make sure that you don't look stupid in front of your partner, and that you execute the techniques somewhat okay, so that you can keep going, and sure. And this is one of the problems I have with Hombu, is that there's a whole lot of demonstrating, but there's not a whole lot of teaching going on. You look, and the Japanese way of teaching martial arts has always been, teacher teaches, student doesn't get it, student goes to senpai teaches, right? The senior. But that's also kind of been lost at Hombu. That's why I was so fortunate to have a great senpai, in DJ who really got that. And he taught me stuff like, when in the summertime, when Yokota sensei finishes class, like, you hold his gi while he goes and has a shower, and take all the bokken down to the first floor and that kind of stuff. So, I come back to the point of this whole, it's so super important to have this kind of senior figure in your life who can kind of guide you on the, the way to go.
Yep. Yeah. And I think that the technology of teaching has come a long way since the 40s, 50s, we're figuring out ways that people learn better and learn quicker, more efficiently, more effectively. And I think it comes back to what you mentioned earlier, which is that senpai kohai relationship. Although I find, because I have an independent dojo, I can kind of create the culture that I would like to see. And what I usually do with students is say, you are responsible for all the students that are junior to you. You have a certain amount of ownership. If they go up and they show poorly, I'm going to be looking to you. And so when they take those people on as their kohai, kind of same kind of relationship, there's a certain about a burden that goes on. All right, you've advanced far enough, now you take responsibility for those beneath you, as well as your own training, where you are responsible for advancing yourself. So your mind, really your circle of influence, needs to go beyond just your own self. It goes to the other people within the dojo. And it's one thing that people show up and sweep and clean the bathrooms and tidy up and take garbage out and stuff like that. That's all impersonal. It's good attention to the dojo, don't get me wrong, but when that same level of attention or greater is put on each other, where we're there to make each other better, to me, that's where you start getting a lot of learning. And people, they don't have enough time. We can't train 8, 10, 12 hours a day, six days a week. We have to make a lot of the few hours a week that we have. And to me, this is one way to do it, is to bring in that ownership that everybody's there for everybody else in addition to ourselves. And that's where, I've seen of martial arts of every stripe, not just Aikido, but I've seen people come in, quietly put on their gear, go out, train, get changed back in their regular clothes, and they leave. Like, there's no engagement, student to student, no camaraderie. And I think that camaraderie is a great benefit, not just to learning, but of having people to be wanting to be part of that community, like attracting them to it. It's not a sterile thing. I remember visiting a dojo a number of years ago, and I walked in and it felt like I just walked into a church. Like, nobody would speak above a whisper. Once class started, you did not utter a word. Only the instructor would speak. It was, and I left and I was like, wow, I was kind of glad to visit. Beautiful dojo. I mean, it looked like the Japanese embassy, but in terms of spirit or soul, like, it was hollow. I might as well have been in an empty room, and I was like, wow, I'm glad that's not my only option for Aikido, because I don't know if I would want to go back there.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. And I've heard there are other places like that too. Other places I visited have been more congenial. Somewhere of the, well, you don't know our choreography, obviously, because you're not behaving like all of our ukes are doing, and so it's a little odd. But like you, when I would travel for competition, I'd love seeing somebody from another area. I'd love to see the stuff that they did that I've never seen before, or I've never done before. It was just such a great learning experience. And I'd like to see Aikido have a little bit more of that eager curiosity versus the slight arrogant superiority thing. And from what I've seen, it kind of goes in ups and downs throughout the years. It'll kind of surge for a little bit, and then it'll subside, and there'll be curiosity, and then it'll kind of surge again and kind of go back and forth. But it'd be nice to leave that behind of, well, our Aikido is great, and it's better than everybody else's Aikido. And I don't know, it seems like a tail chasing exercise by and large.
From what I can tell from talking to some of the old timers, like, training in Aikido in the 70s, 80s, early 90s was pretty much just like what you just said. Like, everyone was humble. The training was super hard. There were a bunch of ass kickers around who were legitimately, if you don't bring your A game, you're getting thrown off the tatami. And this is kind of generally, it's not just an Aikido thing. I think it's a sign of the times of our global society, where it's gone so much where, like, don't step out of line, don't throw too hard, you don't want to hurt somebody. It's like, whatever happened to good old honest, hard training? I've been in trouble a couple of times at Hombu and pulled aside for training too hard, and that just blows my mind. Like, how can that be a thing? This is a place that in the 50s had guys knocking on the door and saying, I'm a 6 dan in karate, give me your best guy right now, and throwing down legitimate challenges, to now being like, well, please don't throw hard, and you got to be careful. And it's I'll be honest with you, man, it's a sad state that we find ourselves in the Aikido world overall, where guys like us who love it as a martial art are kind of the ugly duckling of the group.
Yeah, it's having met a lot of competitors, and then people that were wannabe competitors and others that just like to kind of play around and do it, and they weren't very serious, you can very much see that heart of a warrior in people and how they carry themselves, how they go to compete. You know, and when I would spar and when I'd see other really skilled people spar with somebody with much less experience, you could tell when they're playing around, and they should. Like, that's how, you know, wolf pups learn. They wrestle with the adults, not because the adults kill them, but they just, they play and they learn. But, you know, you can watch two fighters go, and you see a young fighter come up and start to learn. And now he surprises the senior. And suddenly you see the fangs start to drop, like, okay, this is getting serious now. And the sad part is I've seen entire rooms at seminars of people that that don't appear to have any of that ability whatsoever. It's like a bunch of librarians, kind of, you know, like, that's great. But, you know, if something were to go sideways on a street, would I want to have this person at my back? And for the most part, no, that wouldn't be. And that's one of my goals as a martial artist. Like, I want to be that. And one of the greatest things my instructor ever told me was, you know, Tristan, if I were suddenly in fear for my life, I would want to have you right behind me. And you know, that to me, that meant a lot more than any belt rank that I was tested for or anything. You know, those things are not tangible. I can't hang that on my wall, but you know, it's in here when somebody knows, like, you know, you're a beast.
Well, it means that your training means something, which is important. You know?
Yeah, and it's not enough just to go through the motions. And I guess that was what I brought to my Aikido training when I started, because I was already a competitor, very experienced, and I'm like, I know what it was like to face somebody. Now I just wanted a different tool set. Like, okay, this was something I wanted to make work. And I had the very great blessing of having he was Kohai. He started about a year after I was, but he wanted the same thing from his art. And so while I was in a group that had some people that were not ready for that, when he and I partnered up, we would pretty quickly ramp up and be like, all right, let's make this work. And as we got, you know, to be intermediate students together and then more advanced students together, you know, the whole class would be going on pace, and we'd be over there just pounding the hell out of each other. And we would go, all right, give me something else, throw another punch, or try to evade this, or be creative, try to take me down. You know, you get more and more outside the bounds. And fortunately, I had a dojo that accepted that. Like, it allowed us to do that. But we had such a great time. We were always smiling. We'd start laughing and stuff in the middle of it. To me, that's when a sensei is like, you should train with joy in your heart. To me, that's what it meant. Like, enjoy the hell out of this, because it is fun. And it like, then you want to come back.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because I find that, you know, in those very other few training sessions that I did outside of Yokota Sensei's at Hombu, the minute I went off script just a little bit, they were like, no, you can't do that. Whereas Yokota Sensei, we go to the very far top corner and we just do our thing, and he doesn't bother us. Now, we don't go acting like idiots and we don't start grappling each other. But there are times with my friends that it's ended up on the ground, or someone's gone, you know, when I'm trying to do like idiot leg, and he's going to take my leg, right? And I've reacted and stuff like that. Whereas one of the other Hombu Shihan once.
Well, looks like we had a little bit of a glitch. Hang on.
It was a different.
We had a glitch there. You may want to restart that thought.
And okay.
Yep.
This so I had almost got thrown out of class once for doing something only very like subtly different, and this one sensei had got angry at me. Oh, you when you're in my class, you do as I say. But all it was like the teacher was throwing kotegaeshi, and I had done Yokota Sensei does a different pin, which he's the only one that does this in the Hombu. And I just like automatically done that pin because I've been doing it for so long. And the teacher didn't like that I had done this different pin, and made a note in front of him and made a real effort to, you know, tell me this is not how you do it in my class. But the funny thing was, 2 hours before that, this sensei had been training in Yokota Sensei's class when we'd done that. Yeah. Okay. So it's kind of like, oh man.
Well, and that's I guess the thing about humility is, if I had somebody visit, to my class or come to my class, let's say they moved in and they had been training in Aikido and they had their habits, I'd never take that as a personal affront to me that they didn't do what I just showed, that they were so well programmed that they were doing their own thing. Like, I would treat it more like a coach and say, okay, you've done it this way for a long time. Try it the way I'm showing it and evaluate which one you like better and use the one that you think is most reliable. Because that's where Aikido becomes your own, and your own martial art becomes your own. It's not going to be a carbon copy of other people's.
Right. Unless of course you're a Christian Tissier student.
Well, of course, that's where the asterisk comes in. Like, except for
in that case, you might as well put on your Star Wars helmet and be one of the stormtroopers, because like every one of his students, and there are good points and bad points, but every one of his students, and God bless the man for being such a marketing genius and making a whole bunch of money out of Aikido. Mm-hmm. But you look at every one of his students and they all want to be Christian Tissier, right? For me, I'm sorry.
Nobody puts on a better demo than Tissier does. Like, he is like the Steven Spielberg of Aikido demonstrations. Very powerful, very impressive. Love the music and the lights and the whole production.
Don't forget the taiko drums.
Oh yeah, exactly. Very powerful. So I want to turn to a few of the comments, because we had a number of people comment in on what they would want to hear us talk about. And I'll just go kind of top down here. First comment is it said, get back on Facebook. We miss you in the forum.
Well, look, here's I'll tell you why. That I went back to, I did open my account yesterday, mm-hmm. because I had to get some information for an event that I was supposed to be attending. Mm-hmm. But I will most likely stay deactivated till at least Christmas, and here are the reasons. It all started with these Aikido cultist groups. Mm-hmm. There are plenty of them. Your group's not one of them, mm-hmm. right? Your group is one where we're able to exchange ideas and talk sensibly to other like-minded people. Mm-hmm.
But we try to keep the temperature level down.
Right. Yeah. Well, you do a good job of that.
Thank you.
These other Aikido groups, and I was in them for a while, and as much as I would try to ignore like some of the crap that they put up, sometimes you don't, and you just watch it. And for me, it was ruining my day, seeing like this absolute, like just trashy stuff, and people saying all these wonderful things, and then other people coming in and bashing them, and it was just like online wars. Mm-hmm. And all about Aikido. I was like, this is taking away my love for the art. So the first thing I did was I got out of all those groups. I left them all. Mm-hmm. But then I noticed that in the catch wrestling groups I was in, the same stuff was happening there, right? And the thing is, catch wrestling is kind of a dying art, right? It's not, there might be a handful of dojos in the US at the very most. There's one in Tokyo.
And they're really trying to kind of rebuild it right now, aren't they?
They're trying. Yeah. I hope it catches on, but it's kind of until recently, it was a dying art. And they're the hardcore loyalists. Mm-hmm. And they would be the cultists equivalent, like the Aikido cultists of catch wrestling. Right. Now, catch wrestling is an amazing form of wrestling, but it's not the be all and end all. Mm-hmm. Just like, judo is not the be all end all of whatever. And every martial arts had its great points, but it's also got its weak points. Mm-hmm. And what I found was that these catch wrestling guys were also like, catch wrestling rules, BJJ sucks, and, yeah. And then they were getting these like arguments and that goes. I was like, well, I got to leave these groups now. Mm-hmm. And then I watched the Social Dilemma. Have you seen that?
Yeah, I have seen it. It's haunting.
It's haunting. And just where, they're manipulating our thoughts, and, I'm a lot stronger than that. But at the same time, it was true. Like, I was getting these ads on Facebook that I didn't want to see. Mm-hmm. And I thought, you know what, like, I'm not going to miss anything if I stay off for 2 months.
Right.
So I'm in my kind of trial run right now. My mother keeps saying, God bless her, please come back to Facebook. Please come back to Facebook. I miss, because she's one of those mothers who comments with love hearts on absolutely everything.
Okay. Sweet mom.
Yeah, sweet mom. Because I'm her only boy, right? I have 3 sisters, but I'm her only boy. So, the golden blue-eyed boy. And if I ever did go back Facebook, it would probably be just for my mother, but but I'm
Well,
kind
what
of
a good
enjoying.
boy.
I really wish there was a way I could just kind of like join like your group and a couple of other little groups and not have to be on Facebook.
Yeah.
But
I
I
I've
still
heard
have
from a number of people in the Aikido world that have written me and said, I've ditched all of them except yours. Like yours is the only one that's got at least some sanity in it that is not off the rails in kooky town. And part of it's even the Facebook thing of people that post up, live videos of them playing with their cat or dancing in their dining room or something, and it's kind of hard to moderate that just because Facebook is such an open to the wild kind of thing. But it is what it is. So the second question we got says, as someone who is seeking the modernization attitude, does he find resistance in mainstream Japan, and how much of that is down to being a foreigner? And I guess we covered maybe a little bit of that, but do you find being a foreigner being a challenge for kind of what you want to do within Aikido? Or
no, I think it has its advantages because I can get away with a lot of things that the Japanese can't. And to be honest, the Japanese people in Hombu Dojo, I may have come across one or two in my time, but generally Japanese people are in general very calm, gentle, peaceful people. And the ones that go to Hombu are not looking for anything other than the nice Aikido training.
Sure. Yeah, and I mean, I see that too. One of the things I took up a while back, I thought I'd try out kyudo because I come from a family of archers, and I was fascinated with the Japanese bow, but it was so meditative, and it really didn't have anything to do with actually shooting arrows. And to me, that's, if I want to learn archery, I want to shoot arrows.
Spend like a minute holding up, or
right. Well, it's how you walk up to the line, and how you dress and the whole thing. And I'm like, again, all style, and I can appreciate the aesthetic, but I want to learn, I guess, kyujitsu would be more of my interest than kyudo.
Well, there is importance in being able to do that, but when time comes to shoot that arrow, you better hit the target.
Exactly. If you can't do that, it doesn't matter how pretty your outfit is. you're going hungry.
I can tell you a funny story actually that you bring this up. That every year here in Japan, there's the International Budo University they have.
Okay.
Right, where the entire curriculum is Budo based, and you can get a legitimate degree from there. And actually, that's what DJ, my senpai, had done.
Okay.
He went to Budo Dai, which is the University of Martial Arts, and every year they have this 90% foreigners only. It's designed to attract foreigners camp, and it's 3 days long. And if you're Japanese, it's very hard to get into, but they do like to have about 10%. Just to bring a little bit of Japanese flair, I guess, into it or whatever. And what it is that you choose your home martial art. So for me, I chose Aikido, right? So you get there on the Friday night, and by the way, it was like $50 for 3 days of training, all food and accommodation included for $50.
Wow! Oh wow!
Right?
Okay.
Subsidized by the government. So it's a government program. And so you do your home martial art on the Friday night, and then you spend all day Saturday. You choose 2 different arts. They have everything. They have everything that has a do, like Aikido, Karate do, Shorinji Kempo, everything. Like sumo, that you could try sumo, judo. There wasn't a martial art that you couldn't try. Kyudo, everything. So I chose judo and sumo for my 2 martial arts on the Saturday. I did the judo first, and it was all these kids, big and small. Because in Japan, judo attracts all the big kids. The 200 plus pound kids or whatever, they all go there. I had so much fun in judo that I stuck around. I gave up the sumo. I was going to do sumo, and I gave that up to do another 3. Sorry, so I did 6 hours of judo. The next day was you do your own martial art again in the morning. So I did my Aikido in the morning. And then from there, they had demonstrations of everyone. So all the teachers that came to teach, that they do a demonstration. Now, I had never seen Kyudo in my life, ever. Okay. So when the Kyudo demonstration comes around, I see these guys in their lovely outfits with their massive big, what do you call them, bows, I guess you would say.
Yep.
And they took forever with their nice little walk to get to the center, wherever they had to go. And then, the whole process took about 10 minutes before they fired the arrow. And I guess I was not one of the only ones. I guess most people had never seen Kyudo. And we're all kind of like, wow, this is amazing. These masters. and he pulls it and he pulls it and he pulls it and he waits and he waits and he waits and he waits and all this anticlimactic stuff, and he lets go and it hits the bottom and doesn't even hit the target. And we're kind of just kind of looking around. This is like one of the highest ranking kyudo guys, and he doesn't flinch. It's his second one, does exactly the same thing, but lets it go, and it only just makes the bottom of the. And we're like, wow! And I was expecting a bullseye for all that ceremonial stuff that he did, but they explained it as, like maybe he was his feeling, or something like that, and I'm sure there's an explanation somewhere, but someone like me, like if you're gonna fire an arrow, like hit the damn target.
You're you're there to do one thing, and that's
right.
hit the target with your arrow.
I swear to God, the first one ricocheted off the ground.
Okay.
Like, I could do better.
Right.
And I never got that, but
Nah, it is what it is.
Someone will explain that to me, I hope.
Exactly. Well, the third question, it says, I believe the single main step Aikido needs to take is graded pressure testing system. I'm not suggesting competition. How would someone with his knowledge base approach this? I think it's a good question.
This is hard.
It is a hard question.
For one, you have to ask, what is pressure testing? Like, what kind of pressure testing? Okay. And at what level do we start? For me, it's such a. I mean, this could go on all day, this topic, but it's first of all, I want to say that the gradings at Hombu Dojo that I've seen have been some of the worst of my martial arts career. Just shaking your head, brutally bad gradings at Hombu. And I hate to speak ill of Hombu, but I have to call a spade and say, like, the gradings are absolutely brutal. There may be one guy in the whole group who can hold his head high. And my kohai, who you've probably seen in some of my videos, Mr. Manbun, the Irish Thai, his Nidam was excellent. And I took ukemi for him. And it was one of the very few, but I remember thinking, like, oh my God, this is horrible. There's zero spirit here. And the techniques are like, they're all like scared to do any kind of techniques. And I always remember that my sensei in Australia used to always, he's from England, and he used to always say, come on lads, keep the kettle boiling, and for me, it's like, okay, how do we pressure test? Well, at that level that I saw, pressure testing is impossible.
Absolutely. Or at least high level pressure testing.
Well, from what I saw, any kind of pressure testing, these kids would, well, not even kids that were adults, probably older than me, would lose it.
Right.
So I think here's one thing. Aikido is, okay, it's an art where we can train 100% of the time comfortably. That's not good.
Correct.
We don't want to ever be training comfortably. But in Aikido, that's all it is. We're just always 100% comfortable, unless you get someone who stops you, or I kind of do enjoy sometimes the people who are a little bit, like smart asses who do like to try and test you out. So all I ask is, look, attack 100% pure and go for me as hard as you can. Go for me. If I get hit, I tell Tig, I'll have to call him Mr. Manbun. He won't like that. But I tell Tig all the time, like, just hit me. If I get hit, I get hit. And I tell other people that. And but then again, when I train with someone like Hussein, I told you about, the Serbian military guy, we train and then we'll throw a showman and then we'll try something else. And that's how I react. And we'll always say, like, you have a look at a guy. There's a guy online, actually, and you'll be interested to see it. I'm going to post it in your group after this.
Perfect.
I'll go back to Facebook and post it. But there's a guy called Shirakawa. You may have seen him, you may have not. Now, he's kind of getting recognition all around the world as being this amazing Aikido guy who knows a lot of jiu-jitsu. And he's Mr. Instagram, right? And he's got like 100,000 followers on Instagram, and his stuff looks beautiful. But he also does throw in a little bit of like jujitsu, but at the same time, he doesn't understand that, you know, you got to finish. You got to try to tap someone out. You got to submit them. You got to, he just throws them nicely with this nice jujitsu, and it kind of doesn't really mean anything. So like when you want to get pressure tested, keeping it in the realms of Aikido, throw that shomen, throw that yokomen. If you're able to execute something, great. If you're not, you have to have a henko-waza without even thinking. But you have to be able to take them down or atemi or submit them, whatever. But, you know, people who don't understand how to do that, how to submit people, how to throw legit kicks, punches, they're not going to be able to do pressure testing. And this is the thing where Aikido has to be all inclusive. We have to, you know, anybody should be able to do Aikido. So if you're talking about pressure testing, then it really should be maybe a select few who train in a separate class. But then again, you start an Aikido class and what do? You do 10 minutes of warm-ups and you get straight into the technique. How do you condition your body to be able to take this pressure tested? Well, in wrestling, where I came from, in pro wrestling, you know, yes, it's somewhat entertainment, but it's still legitimate wrestling. And we have to train for hours and hours. We squat, we do the push-ups, we do Hindu squats, Hindu push-ups, which is like breathing the opposite way when you do the thing. It came from Indian wrestling, which is amazing, by the way.
Yep.
And we condition our body for the time. Actually, well, the way it was explained to me was like we call them like blow-up drills. And by you're blowing up, your cardio-wise, you cannot move anymore. You can't possibly do another exercise, but you find that place deep down in your heart where you can go the extra step. And it was explained to me as, you know, and the Japanese pro wrestling here, the training is so militaristic, hardcore, you know, base borderline barbarian way of training. And it was explained to me that you're in a match or you're in a situation that you might not want to be in and you can't possibly go anymore, but you find that spot and, you know, you find that place where you can get that extra bit of wind to finish the match or to, you know, to whatever, submit your opponent. And that all comes from training. If you are not trained to, you know, be able to withstand this kind of stuff, you can't just jump into a live, you know, situation where, you know, pressure test, go, right? And this is the point where it's like, and how many Aikido people legitimately train off the mats? Like how many people go to the gym? I'm not saying start, you know, lifting hardcore, but like, do you run? Do you do push-ups? Do you do squats? You know, like if you want to be a legitimate martial artist, like, and if you're one of these people who wants to talk about pressure testing, well, you gotta have this extra, you know, cardiovascular and all this other stuff. It comes hand in hand. So I think it's, you know, this is a tough question, but Aikido doesn't need to change at all, but the training needs to change. Okay, and what
I think that's a good way to put it.
Right, the Aikido as an art itself is fine, but we need to, you know, like I know there's one dojo in Australia, who are separate to the main entity there. They run by themselves, and they do 30 to 45 minutes of cardio drills before training. Now you can choose to skip that if you want, but the sensei there told me that basically nobody does, right? And then they go at it hard afterwards, and you build up that conditioning through that extra training to be able to take this pressure testing. And I really believe that, you know, the way for Aikido to move forward is not so much, we can't have shiai, like we can't have these matches because that's not what Aikido is, but we need to bring back, well, I don't know if it even had it, but we need to add these extra, because people aren't going to do it on their own. You go into an Aikido locker room, right? And if you compare them to other locker rooms, there are a lot of overweight people or super skinny people. There's not a whole lot of, at least in Hombu Dojo, there's not a whole lot of in shape people. And so I think before we start pressure testing, well, we better start pressure testing our bodies ourselves first, you know?
Yeah. It's you know, one of the things with pressure testing, and I just want to throw this in, is that people tend to think pressure testing is like full 100% intensity. Like that's the only pressure testing you can do. And when I competed, I would often take brand new people and say, okay, we're going to do a fairly hard sparring match. We wouldn't go 100%, but at their level, they could only handle 30%.
Mhm.
But within that 30% level, we'd find the weaknesses, we'd find the deficiencies that they needed to go and train and overcome. And I think that as any practitioner goes from beginning to intermediate to advanced, you'll slowly ramp up and increase from a light pressure testing to a medium to a heavier. And each time you do, you'll find some problems and you'll go and train them and get them ready. And then that same level of intensity is like a cakewalk, and now you need to bump it up. And so it is a progression. It's not just a throw somebody in a Conan pit and then they go crazy.
Well,
that's the way to get injured and to become frustrated.
Like I said, I can only speak from my experiences because I have done 90% of my training at Hombu Dojo. But if you even lightly pressure tested, I get the feeling, and I may be wrong, but I do get the feeling that I'd be the worst in the world for trying to pressure test someone. And it's really not welcome. It's not welcome at all.
Yep. Well, it just seems like the focus is not there. It's on something else.
No. Whereas back in the day, like I'll never forget one of my my senpai, a Frenchman called Didier, who's legit old school, Aikido guy. He's in his 70s now, but he went to Hombu in the 1970s, and he was telling me stories of, like he used to have long hair, and then Shibata Sensei would rip it as hard as he could, right? And then Kishomaru Doshi would just laugh and walk away, right? Or people would regularly come out in the 70s and 80s in Hombu with like blood all over them and everything, and it wouldn't be an afterthought. But right now, no, if there's just a little bit of blood, you better go get that cleaned up, and harmony, please, harmony. I'm just not sure that modern day Aikido is built for pressure testing, unless you find a few friends by yourself to go and train.
Yeah, I agree. So the next question we have, and actually these two are going to be related. He said, "Is his wrestling predetermined in outcomes?" And I think that's a question a lot of people want to know in general.
No comment, sir.
No comment.
Does a magician reveal his secrets? Look, all I'll say on the matter is, I have to get from point A to point B, and how I do that is up to me. Okay, what we do is not WWE stuff,
right?
Whereas that's the complete show. So this is actually a good segue, if you don't mind, if I can quickly bring up the history of how Japanese professional wrestling became UFC, became mixed martial arts.
Sure.
And it's basically
maybe you could feather that into the next question, which is, what is Hombu attitude towards your wrestling?
Okay, I'll touch on that at the end.
Okay.
Well, actually, no, I can do it straight away because honestly, I don't know if anyone even knows that I do it. A couple of them do. Yokota Sensei didn't like it, to be honest. And at one point, I told him that I quit because I could just see that he didn't really like it, but he knew that I didn't, and now he makes jokes all the time, like I'm the heel here, like a heel, the bad guy, right? So he makes jokes in the middle of Hombu, with everybody around saying like, I'm the heel, you're not the heel, that kind of stuff. And
Sensei always knows.
Yeah. Well, he's a great guy, but he's a heel too, right? Because of his techniques are very heelish and that they're aggressive and they damn work. But let's go back to, so you had the end of World War II. Japan was destroyed, right? The US and the Allies bombed the hell of the country. The A bomb took out 2 cities, and the country was in ruins. You had millions and millions of people begging for food, living in like cracks in the side of the road. And the first thing that the Americans did was, how do we rebuild this nation? Some of the American soldiers were trained in professional wrestling. So that was one of the first things they did, is they started putting on professional wrestling shows. But Japanese people didn't know how to wrestle. Okay, so how do we get these wrestlers? Well, let's grab some judo guys. Let's grab some sumo guys. And these guys, their training had only ever been in this, hardcore, militaristic style training. So immediately, these Japanese guys were like, well, we have our ideas of training, right? And that's Bushido. That's the way of the samurai, the way of the warrior. But we do also want to do this new professional wrestling. So what they did was to build up national morale. They brought in all these gigantic 6 foot whatever white guys. Most of them had never wrestled in their lives. They were probably GIs or whatever. And they had the Japanese guys do their judo techniques and do whatever and do their chops and win. And pro wrestling, that was the first step to building up national morale, was through professional wrestling. The television boom in Japan started through professional wrestling because they had created these big stars and everyone wanted to see them live. So now they needed TVs and they needed to be in color. So TV owes its infancy to pro wrestling. Let's just fast forward quickly to the 1980s. You have the biggest group in the world called New Japan Pro Wrestling. They're run by a guy called Antonio Inoki, famous for fighting Muhammad Ali in the very first ever MMA match, right? And Inoki had been trained by legit catch wrestlers, right? And one of the guys was named Carl Gotch, and he was an Olympic wrestler and a catch wrestler. And another guy called Billy Robinson. Legend. Yeah. And then another guy called Billy Robinson. So what they started to do
another legend. Yeah.
Right, Billy Robinson, right? Now they started to teach these guys catch wrestling, and they said, like, put all this into your stuff. Don't just do like your chops or your judo throws, like, let's make this legit wrestling. But it was still, I'll give up. It was still predetermined. But the entire match was legitimate until the end, right? And that's how you build superstars, right? You have to have a plan from many months back. It's like playing chess. How do you make this guy the top guy, kind of thing. But a small little group in the mid 1980s were like, you know what? Like, we don't want to do this like predetermined like stuff. Like, we know all these legitimate holds. Like, we know how to, F people up. Let's go out and let's make our own. So they made a thing called the UWF, which when UFC 1 was on, heavyweight champion, right? So UWF, they didn't last very long. And then they went back to New Japan and they broke off again. And there are a couple of different groups, but then and where I get my name Fujiwara from is from a guy called Yoshiaki Fujiwara, who's the top student of Carl Gotch. And he has started his own group, Fujiwara Group, to do these like these matches that look like, legit MMA matches, but there was still, yes, the result was predetermined. And then from there, you got two guys. One guy's name's Funaki, Masakatsu Funaki, and another one, Minoru Suzuki, who said, you know what? Let's just get rid of all this. We just want legitimate competition, right? We just want to see who the toughest guy is. And so they made a group called Pancreas, right?
Pancreas, yeah.
And their rival was called Shuto, which came from a guy who actually used to wear a mask, tiger mask, and he made Shoot Wrestling, which was a legit, the company's still around today. It's called Shuto. So you had Pancreas and you had Shuto. Now UFC had been in talks with the Gracies, and I believe they had kind of looked at what these Japanese groups were doing, and they're like, you know what, like, we can do that, And so, the organizers, there was a group from Colorado, grabbed the Gracies and made UFC 1, but they had a whole bunch of jiu-jitsu guys and, washed up, a couple of washed up boxers and whatever. And that's why they invited Ken Shamrock in. And that's a story for another day. But the influence of, professional wrestling on the martial arts world is something that not many people know about. And I won't say American professional wrestling because its influence was only to bring it to Japan. And from there, it morphed into its own unique beast.
Yeah, that's a cool story.
Yeah.
We've got quite a few other questions, so we'll kind of have to probably blast through these a little bit quick. I said, I would like to know his opinion on Mai/distance management, Irimi /entering, and atemi as concepts. Boy, that could be an entire day's worth of conversation, I'm sure.
Yeah, let's just sum it up quickly. But Aikido is the greatest, I believe, the best martial art for teaching that kind of stuff. But at the same time, like, what do you do when you get there? Like, what do you do when you close a distance or when you escape the distance? Like, what do you do? Like, you need to know what to do. And I don't believe, like, honestly, Aikido really teaches that, which is why, like, I always call Aikido this all-encompassing martial art, in that it has everything that we're looking for, and it has every single possible realm of technique that you could want to put into it. You can put into it if you want. But you need to know how to put it in, which means go out and find it and cross train and bring it back and put it in. But what do you do when you have the mai? Like what you do is depends on how much you know. Okay, so the ideas of mai and all this stuff is like, yeah, it's great, but then really, like, how much do you know when it's time to, to throw down, or time to, so that can go on for a whole day. But those principles are amazing. I really love Aikido for that, is what I'll say.
Yeah, that is great. And in my mind, that it's the Arimi part that, if anything, has been neglected with a lot of mainstream Aikido. It's been so heavily oriented towards Tenkan and avoiding collision and avoiding
big circular movements and stuff.
Which there's a time and place for it, but in my mind, it's to set up the Arimi. The Arimi is what finishes.
Well, I can tell you right now from my experience in catch wrestling and no-gi jiu-jitsu, none of that big circle stuff will work. Zero. I'm sorry to break everybody's bubbles. The only thing that will work against someone who knows how to grapple is inemi. It's the only thing that works. It's the only thing that works. And if you're able to take their back, well, that's a good thing, because it's very hard to take their back. But once you do, it's over.
Right.
But even that's super hard to do. So I'm sorry to burst out all the Aikido purist bubbles, but letting someone hold on to your wrist as hard as they can, trying to move them, or trying to do these big circular movements. A kickboxer will kick you in the head. A wrestler will take you down. But if you can perfect inemi, you have somewhat of a chance. But what do you do? What do you do when you get there?
Totally agree.
That's
all right. Thing. So the next one, and I don't even know if we can get into this one. He says, I'm interested in hearing more about his conditioning regimen and training methods.
Okay. I'll touch on it very quickly. I try to do I've got a couple of, my knees are pretty bad at the moment, but I try to do squats every morning, the Hindu squats. And even if I can sometimes knock out 50 or 100, I'm happy. In my heyday when I was a wrestler, we did 500 every day. Right? And I've also done 1,000 once, which is absolutely mental.
That is insane.
And it was right before a match as well. And my senpai in wrestling was pissed off at the whole group and said, "You're all doing 1,000 squats." I'll never forget, like, I'm borderline puking, and we're counting. There was 10 of us in the group, and we had to count 100 each. And I'll never forget, I was sixth in line, and I just finished counting number 600 and whatever up to 700. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to puke. And my knees and my legs were dead. But because you're in the group, you have no choice but to keep going. We got through to 1,000. I was like, man, you know what? I'm fine. I did that. I did it. I don't want to do it again, but I did it.
Wow.
And so I believe that, you're training, you have to push yourself. Aikido and any other stuff, you got to get out of your comfort zone.
Yeah, if you're in your comfort zone, you're in the wrong spot. Like,
in the wrong spot.
You're just coasting, or you're in cruise control.
Right.
Okay, so the next one, I'd like to hear his thoughts regarding the differences in attitude between Japanese Aikidoka and other Japanese martial artists. Do you have a perspective on that one?
Okay, well, some of my friends who are professional MMA fighters here, when they see that I do Aikido, they say, well, your Aikido is a little bit different. But the Aikido that I've seen, basically, these MMA guys and these other guys say to me, look, just show me if it works. If it works, I'll believe it, and I won't think it's bad. But until you show me that it works, no, sorry, I've got no time for it. That's basically, in a nutshell, the impressions that I get from the other Japanese martial artists.
And to me, it's a fairly valid with anything. Like, if somebody says, "Oh, I'm a great painter," well, show me your paintings. Yeah. Or you're a great cook. Well, cook me a dinner that's not going to make me retch. So I guess I admire the practicality part, because if anything, I think the Japanese culture is very heavily focused on aesthetics. Like, that's the overall impression I get. So it's, if there is an undercurrent within there of, okay, well, you got to put an arrow in the target. Like, show me you can put an arrow in the target, and then I'll be impressed. So that's pretty cool. All right. Let's see. When is Aikido?
Just one more thing on that. look, Aikido is great for not just kicking ass. Like it is there to make us better people. It is there to be able to resolve conflict peacefully. But why can't I be a better person? And why can't I learn? Yeah, you get this from Aikido people all the time. Oh, well, Aikido, it's more than just different works, and I'm learning how to be a better person, and I want to be a true Budoka. Well, why can't I do all that and be an ass kicker at the same time?
Mm-hmm.
Is how I see it. Like it has made me a better person,
Mm-hmm.
but that doesn't mean I have to be a pussy about things.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse my language there, but and that's one thing I don't get with the purist crowd, I'll say.
Right. I remember reading up on Bruce Lee's desire to bring part of the Chinese philosophy through film to the rest of the world. And there was a part in there, and I think I remember reading this in one of the books. It wasn't in his movies, but he talked about the idea that strength, and not just physical strength, but like prowess, is the virtue by which all the other virtues are allowed to survive. You can be as kind-hearted and as benevolent, as generous as you want, but if you're so weak that you just get overrun by somebody who's stronger and killed, like those virtues that you held would not survive. So to me, like I want to be strong enough to be defiant and say, no, you are not going to dominate me, or I'm not going to be a victim. Therefore, that is the avenue by which all those other virtues that we do want to build that are important, they're very critically important, are able to keep going and to be passed on to the next generation, because without that it's just weakness. So yeah, to me that's
watered down in every generation, right? So
that's pretty much it. This next one is actually a pretty good one too. When is Aikido not an Aikido? And I think the English on this one's a little rough, but when is Aikido not Aikido and turn into just technique and mixed martial arts? I'd love to hear you guys talk about how we can effectively introduce and standardize true Randori into Aikido's curriculum. And that's a subject near and dear to my heart, because Randori is my favorite thing ever. I love it, love it, love it. But I'll let you go first on that one.
I've seen the is it Tomiki that does Randori?
Yeah, Tomiki does the competitions.
Right. I've seen that, and I got to be honest with you. Yeah. No, it's pretty poor, man.
It is.
It's really bad. Now, this is a funny thing, because my two closest friends in Aikido, DJ and Hussein, have polar opposite opinions on the next one. Is that their knife Randori is DJ says if you want to learn knife stuff, go learn Kali, right? But Hussein, who's a kendo guy and Tan kendo guy, will say, yeah, but it's a good step towards something. So I'm kind of in between on the fence about it. So I don't mind their knife Randori, but the regular Randori that they do is just it's so bad. It really is.
It seems to me like taking a Formula One car and taking it to a 4x4 park.
Right.
Like it's not the right match for what Aikido is meant to do.
Exactly.
I like the live aspect of it, but I think the overall problem is Aikido is really meant to solve the asymmetric problem of real life violence, where you have one person that wants to be peaceful and the other one who wants to attack. When you take the sport aspect and say now both are trying to do the exact same thing to one another, that's where the distortion occurs.
Right. Yeah, because it's not a sport. It never will be.
But that doesn't mean there shouldn't be the intensity of competition because when that person attacks you on a street, in a bar, wherever you wind up being, he has full intent to do you harm. Like that's the reality part that I think needs to be focused on. And and in fact, the kohai that I talked about, we got into this discussion years ago, and we were talking about how would you do this? And he said, you could actually have an asymmetric competition where, let's say you had basically an uke and a nage, and uke's job, you have 30 seconds to pin or hold down nage, and nage wins if that doesn't happen. Then now you have an asymmetric. That's more like what a self-defense exchange would be like. Time avoidance. You don't have to submit the guy. You just have to keep from being dominated. and you could do it with one person, two people, three people, whatever. But once you get into that head to head, now you've lost it. That now
Well,
it's just,
here's
now
what I will say.
it's not about how the technique is applied, it's how your goal is set.
Right. Here's what I'll say, that if I came to do Randori, I would automatically, without even thinking, I'd be thrown in suplexes or takedowns because I'd be on autopilot.
Sure.
So there's that. But then also you got to think, like, Aikido is not just attack defense.
Right.
It's that way because that's how we're learning how to train. But like, if somebody comes at me with a punch, I don't expect to be able to get a very good ikkyo. But what if I went to back fist somebody and they put up their hands to block it? Well, there's the ikkyo. So there's also, you know, there's the concepts of like sen no sen, like attack and defense, and you know, sen no go and that kind of stuff. I mean, so you could do what you said. You could also change it up, flip it up, and say like, just attack me as hard as you want, and see how uke reacts. If I'm able to do anything, there are a few options you can, but you have to be in a position where, you know, you're comfortable with your partner, that you don't want to hurt them, and if anything, any trouble happens, like, you're not gonna get your ass sued, right?
Right. You know, one of the challenges that I remember doing with some of my seniors, this was a couple of years ago, we'd gone through doing some groundwork preparation, like somebody takes you down how to shift into the mindset. And in order to overcome the problem of, once I started class, everybody's guards up, like they know they're in it. So I had a student go over before class and tackle one of my brown belts from behind, like, because you could be walking down the street and suddenly, bam, you're now on your side. Now what are you going to do? Like, and I wanted to see if the mind shifted into, get on your back, you know, don't be face down, start to do your shrimp, start to get out from underneath. And I did this on a number of my intermediate and advanced students, and they all performed well. Like, it only took them a half second in that, the fall phase of, something's going wrong, and they clicked right into turning, you know, the using knee shields and things like that. Like, this is very easily doable stuff. But it's hard to overcome that surprise, because that's the real world thing that we're going to get, that we would not get in a dojo. Because once you walk in the door, you know, all right, here's what's going to be happening. So a lot of creative ideas. So I think we could probably talk about this for quite a while, but and I've got a couple questions that I'm going to say, but I got one more from a listener, and this one is a bit touchy. I want to see how you're going to run with it. So I would like to know what he thinks about the IAF's extreme push to promote gender equality on the mats, including Yamada Sensei banning some women from practicing for speaking up.
I was hoping you'd avoid this one. But look, I read this blog by a woman who she's Australian, but she lived in New York basically her entire life and done 40 years training at New York Aikikai. Ruth, I can't remember her last name, and I read it and I was completely shocked because like she kind of just basically passed around this, like, whatever it was, something she had to sign. She signed it and passed it on, and Yamada Sensei kicked her out of the dojo the next day after 40 years of experience. And she was training, she was teaching there. Kicked her out, let her back in like a month later, but ran her name through the mud. This is a guy who, right place, right time, went to America in the 60s, you know, as an average Aikidoka. I'm sorry to all the people that say that, but you watch some of his stuff early on, and he really grew into Aikido in the US. He was like a knee down or something at the time. This is a guy who drives Lamborghinis around, you know, hits on women all the time. You know, I've seen him in Australia, you know, getting drunk and being around all the ladies and whatnot. Perhaps he did it because he's one of the old dinosaurs who doesn't want change. But in my dojo, if you're a lady and you don't feel comfortable training, then I'm doing something wrong, right?
Agreed.
Everyone should feel like they're welcome. Now, there's obviously a difference between, you know, what a man can do and what a lady can do, and I don't want to sound sexist about that, but you know, men have more power. I've seen some really legit ladies in my time, but generally, I would say 95% of the ladies that I do Aikido with, I have to go down to their level and train softly and slowly, and that's cool too. That's part of training. But I really think that, you know, everyone should be welcome on the mats.
Mm-hmm.
And what I think he did there, and I don't know much about it, to be honest, but from what I could tell from talking to a few of the people, that he was kind of really out of place there. And but at the same time, I don't want to push them so far that I don't want the IAF to push things so far as where, oh, we must have women teaching. We must have 60% of the instructors women now, or we must have like an LGBT person there. You know, like we must have like a black person there. You're there on your own merit, right? If you're at one of these seminars and you're teaching, it's because you're a damn good instructor. I don't care if you're black, gay, straight, lesbian, whatever. I don't care. You better, you better be someone who's worthy of that spot. You know, so that's my only real thing on it. Like everyone, it should be all inclusive, but at the same time, you don't get your spot just because you're this or that.
Yeah, to me, the whole thing was basically the ugliest of politics coming to the surface, and
It happens a lot.
and you know more about the people there than I do. The things that I'd heard and seen was one of those. It's kind of like you visit somebody's house and the husband and wife are screaming at each other, throwing stuff. Like, you know what? I don't even want to get in the middle of any of this. I don't know any of what happened in the background. I'm not going to judge. I don't want to judge. What I can just say is it breaks my heart to see what is going on here. Like, this is bad news. And, you know, you don't want to point fingers at one and have to ally with the other. It just kind of from the outside be one of those things like, I wish this wasn't happening, and I wish there was a way that this could be resolved and put to bed peacefully, kind of, you know, find that harmony thing that kind of rings a bell somehow.
Yeah.
And it's too bad that that's not what's going on. And that's something that I've seen in many organizations with many shihans, where there's a little bit of everything, whether it's the politics of people being angry because they haven't been promoted to a certain rank or not, or whether you know, the shihan's ego is run away with them and they think that they're some kind of a god, or, you know, that it's just a weird, very weird cauldron of bubbling bad brew. And when it boils over like it had with the what is it, the Yamada's organization, it's just so many rumors. And I'm not a rumor guy. I mean, I'll consider something, but I you don't want to go running off on a crusade off of a rumor, because it creates, it like amplifies the problem. If anything, the problem, not to say that it needs to get shoved under the rug, it's like the right people need to go and deal with it. And the part that was sad for me was hearing that, because I'm also a mediator, and so I guess one of the ideas that was brought up was to have a mediator come in for these two parties and try to help them work it out. And I guess that was rejected. And like, that really points to a serious problem, when an earnest effort to resolve the matter without making it a huge, you know, court of public opinion.
What was it all about? I mean, I don't really know, to be honest.
I'm trying to remember. I guess it was that there were the letter that I remember reading, and I could be a little bit off on this, but there was something, there had some kind of a board that was made up of senior instructors, and there was only, I think, one female on it, and I guess she retired or something like that, but there weren't women on there. There were some women that felt that they should have been promoted to 7th Dan and made shihans, but were not. And should have been more female instructors. That's kind of the feel that I got. In addition to
one thing, while you mentioned that word shihan in Aikido now is it has no meaning. It has no title anymore, because they're handing out the Aikikai, at least, are handing out shihan certificates like you get them from breakfast cereals.
Okay.
Anyone, as long as you're a 6th Dan and you've done X amount of years, you're now a shihan.
Right.
Okay. And to me, that's wrong. Like, a shihan needs to mean something. But on that group thing, that they should have put women on there. Why not? What's that going to do? Like, you know. And
that's, I mean, I don't know what that board was supposed to oversee or anything like that. I mean, the only thing that struck me was I felt it a little odd when somebody said, anybody would say, I deserve to be promoted to a new rank or to a higher rank. Like, I would never take that to a senior ever. Like, that would just be, I was always taught that was absolutely, you know.
Oh yeah.
But
Well,
at any rate, I
Senpai
don't want to
Ko-
judge any party in it. It's sad to see that it goes that way, but in organizations, so often politics destroys it.
Well,
And that seems like what's happening.
I'll say I have firsthand experience with politics. Now my father did Aikido for 27 years, but he started in the early 90s when Aikido was kind of new. Steven Seagal had made it kind of mainstream, and he had done a little bit of Taekwondo, but he was like he did Aikido, right? And he went down to the dojo ended up becoming where I trained in Australia as well, and he joined up and he did it for a long time. But you could kind of just tell as a kid, I could kind of see like he's getting bored, because like his teacher also came from England, and my father's English as well, came from England, and he was a second dan when he came, and he only came with what he knew, and that's all he could teach. So you can see that in Australia, in that particular dojo, the knowledge level it had a ceiling. And so I found that my father started watching a lot of, there was no YouTube in the day, but he started watching a lot of tapes, and like, oh, what's this guy doing? And what if I bring a little bit of Systema? Or what if I bring a little bit of this into my Aikido? What happens? And he had a class he was teaching on Tuesday nights, and he was getting a lot of complaints because the stuff that he was teaching was, while in the Aikido sphere, it was not, Aikido. And he was kind of a little bit hard on some people, and one of the guys who just got his black belt, he was folding his hakama one day, and my old man told him off for not fixing up the mats, not cleaning the dojo, and he ended up being kicked out of the dojo for all these different reasons, not teaching Aikido properly, and wanting to go off and explore, and chastising when really he was just trying to put a little bit of discipline into people and make it a little bit more martial. And they kicked him out. And because of that, I was already in Japan at the time, so it didn't really bother me too much. But he hasn't been able to train since, which is kind of, I can see that it hurts him.
Yeah, that's too bad.
Yeah. So I mean, politics really sucks, and I can tell firsthand. No one wins. No one wins from politics.
Exactly. I guess that brings us to the two wrap-up questions that I felt would be best to leave to last, and that is, where do you see Aikido going in the next 10 to 20 years?
Down the tube, man. If we keep going the way we're going, it's going to turn into Tai Chi, right? And this is the mainstream idea that Doshu and Waka Sensei want. I can't speak for Yoshinkan. I can't speak for the other art. I can only speak for Aikikai. You saw the letter that they put out to the Russians. And the reason they do this is the apple has fallen very far from the tree in terms of what O-sensei could do for martial arts and what his great-grandson can do. Okay. I remember this kid when he was a white belt and didn't want to do Aikido. And he was basically told, you're going to be Doshu. You got to do Aikido. And he was thrown into the corner with a private training partner and basically given a crash course, and then promoted to Waka Sensei, and and he's kind of just got the very basics of the basics. Like he's a good nidan, right? But the problem is that he's not allowed to, and Doshu they're not allowed to go outside the box at all. That's not their job. They have to be the representation of Aikido, what it is, and what current Doshu's father made it. Like he took what O-sensei did and said, like, we need to turn this into something peaceful because of the wartime restrictions where you can't do martial arts, and we need to spread this globally, right? So the apple has fallen so far from the tree with the great-grandson who's going to take over that it's going to be very much style, very little hard training. I can see it. Like the Hombu dojo now is nothing to what it was when I first got there, and nothing to what it was before I was there. And this is they dictate the terms. They're the global organization, and things need to change with them, but they're not going to, because what the hell is Waka Sensei gonna do when you grab him hard? What's he gonna? He's not gonna know what to do. And I'm one of the very few guys who may speak out about this, and I may get in trouble, but whatever, I don't care, because, you know, like, they just want this, you know, nice, beautiful art that makes them a lot of money.
Right. Yeah, I suppose there's not as big a market share of people that want to train martial arts seriously versus people that would like to do some cosplay.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, cosplay is a good word, because that's what a lot of people are doing, dressing up in their hakama and Dude, I hate the hakama. I hate it.
I do too. In fact, I ditched them last year. I just said, "Don't. We're not even doing that anymore." So, at any rate, the last one is, if you could have anything that you want, where would you like to see Aikido go in the future? So it's like you get your one wish, genie in a bottle.
I'll say that I can only talk from my experience in Hombu, but I believe that Hombu reflects the world of Aikido. So in the early days of Hombu, you had kendo classes in there. Okay. You had a bunch of judo guys in there. When O Sensei decided it was time to pass the mantle of the art, he didn't want to give it to his son, right? And the Kishimoto Dojo was the fourth choice, right? He wanted to give it. The first guy he wanted to give it to was a guy called Nakakura, who was a kendo master, and married off his daughter. He married O Sensei's daughter, and he became Ueshiba. And he was basically second Doshu, but not officially. And for whatever reason, he didn't want any part of the Ueshiba family anymore, and he divorced, and he just got out of the limelight. They tried to hand it off to like Mochizuki Sensei, who was also doing judo, and he's very famous for the jiyu-waza, right? The sacrifice throws. He didn't want it, and they tried to give it to another guy, and he didn't want it. And then so they gave it to Kishimoto Dojo, who's a fantastic aikidoka. I have no problems, and he's, you know, Yokoro Sensei was pretty much his bodyguard when he went overseas, his personal uke and whatever. So I have no ill words to speak of Kishimoto Dojo, but Kishimoto Dojo shaped the aikido that we do right now. It's Kishimoto's aikido, right, that we're doing. But my one wish is, like, can we open up some more classes inside Hombu? Can we have a judo class? Can we have a ne-waza class or a submission class? Can we have a group that of select individuals who can do something else? And that's
bring in those outside influences.
That is never going to happen, but that's what I would want.
Well, Christmas is coming, so you never know.
Santa ain't bringing that.
Yeah. Well, cool. Was there anything you else wanted to talk about? We know we've been at it for a while now, so. No,
but we talked. I really enjoyed the conversation. It was great.
Yeah, this has been a pleasure. I'm really glad we got around to getting this done, and it's cool that we were able to address all the user or all the.
Yeah, I'm just tell everybody that I'm really happy that they remember me and came up with all those questions.
Absolutely, yeah. They came from a number of sources, so you are remembered fondly, and we look forward to having you back when we'll calm the internet down for you a little bit, so you can a little bit easier on your nerves, brother.
Thank you.
All right. Well, it's a morning there, so you have a good morning. It'd be a good night for me. So.
All right, man. Thank you very much.
Take care and have a great Christmas.
You too. Thank you.
And have a good night.
See ya.
Thank you very much for watching and supporting this podcast. Enjoy your training.